Greetings and hello, this is Lee DeZormo. This presentation is going to be simply about, as the title says, extraterrestrials. We're going to cover the good and the bad, and perhaps even the neutral. Let us examine something first and foremost that is of great importance, and simply the following, because it does deal with human opinion, and then again, human experience, and basing our opinions upon experience is perhaps in a superior mode than just having a mere opinion. But let us look at it and see as to what the story is. So, in the fundamental sense, very important in a preliminary way that we basically cover this, is that firstly, as to all the various opinions about extraterrestrials that exist from human beings on this planet, there are varying ideas, and it really does come down to the levels of experience that individuals have. So of course, as you can read, but I'll go over them, it does entail that those who have experience are the ones that are giving information or trying to, whereas those who don't are being influenced and listening to the opinions of others, some of which do say they have true testimonies, and others who may claim true testimonies, whereas perhaps it is not necessarily true. So it is just important for us to look at this because this is forming the general, well, if you want to say paradigm or consensus, and the varying extremes between them. So examining it, simply it is this, as I've written, that there are those who have had or are experiencing ongoing actual experience and encounters with extraterrestrials. This can include different races. This also can include extraterrestrial biological entities and extraterrestrial non-biological entities, to call it that, in a more refined way, in a higher dimensional frequencies. And we must also differentiate between spirit entities that are, for lack of a better word, bound to the earth, that are not of the origin of space per se, to put it that way. But we'll go more in depth into that in some moments to come. And then of course there are those who have not had actual personal experience and or encounters, and when they have an opinion, just like with anything, if they have an opinion based on non-experience, then they may be more subject to the influences of others, whereas they do not have a personal foundation to base it upon per se. So just to examine that, because this is very important when we are looking at, like if you interviewed, let's say, 100 people in the street and said, what is your belief on extraterrestrials? And out of the 100, 50% or more, maybe 60 or 70 even said, yeah, I do believe in them. And others said they don't. And then we can ask, out of those who say no, do they have experience? Well, perhaps, probably not, to put it that way. And for those who did, what level of experience do they have or not? So, not to kill the point, but of those two, we have those who have had positive, pleasant, and or non-harmful experiences, those who have had negative or who perceived negative experiences, whereas no harm was intended. So the differentiation between those two within that second one. And then those who perceive positive, whereas it was not necessarily intended to be, or like, for example, for that one, it could have been along the lines of seeing a craft in the sky and saying, oh, it's a star friend or extraterrestrial entity, whereas it might not have been, or it could have been a negative or regressive. So this is important to differentiate between all of the following. You can ask yourself right now, viewing this, where you stand. Do you have your own experience or not? To what level? To what level are you being influenced? To what level is your mind and heart open regarding this matter, and etc. So looking at that, here's the preliminary. So this is important for us to establish this, because a lot of people who have an opinion may be basing it upon a non-truth or a falsity or a deliberate lie even. And then of course there are many, very, very many true tales and accuracies concerning our star family. Because I rather would not necessarily even use the word alien, of course, and extraterra meaning simply not terra, but even then, the soul spark entity that we all are all of the great life, the prime source, then none of us really are from here. So just to make these little differentiation, and let us continue. Now, going with that previous clip with my quick writings and bullet form and all that, well, when we were examining this picture, I just wanted to simply further that idea, or truth rather, that we may have our own experience and to what degrees, and then when we do not, and we are getting stories, and we are believing the stories and testimonies and alleged testimonies of others, we have to understand to what layers is their accuracy, and of course, to what degree is it a knowledge? Is it a second-hand, handed-down knowledge? Is it a third-hand, etc.? So why I chose this picture quickly is simply to show that, and if you just bear with me for the analogy or metaphor, that you can have a reflection of a reflection, and as the tale gets handed down, things can be watered down. So it's important to realize that. So here you have the moon being reflected upon the water, and it's shimmery and a little bit vague, and then you're seeing the source of the light upon the waves, which is the moon itself, and then the moon is getting the light from the sun. So you have handed down knowledge, and as it goes, it can become less accurate over time, such as it is with anything. A story that was told 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago, or 5,000 years ago is perhaps changed to whatever degrees. Or even in school or the workplace, you can have someone saying something and then the story alters a little bit slightly, or it gets exaggerated or not exaggerated enough. Or rather, what I mean is not enough emphasis put into something. So that's just very important. You guys understand this? I just want to make that clarity, because it is very important when we are examining this very, very, very real phenomenon, that we do have a grasp of what is true, what is not, what is vague, etc. Now, I would think it might be fair to say that only a fool or a very egotistical or naive person, or what, I don't know how we should really accurately put it, but a person that thinks the Earth is the only place with life simply put, is in a mode of ignorance, whether it's based upon pride or simple innocence and just not knowing and not having some experience. But the fact of the matter is, we can conclude with details and with accuracy now that we are not alone in the universe. The Earth is not the center of the universe. The sun is not the center of the universe, but rather the center is anywhere a being is. If you allow me to get metaphysical here, as I am very much a spiritual person, and I'm certainly going to be putting spirituality in the forefront of this presentation, as you'll see, but looking at life itself and what is the very level of, what is the essence of one's being, what is the core, and we can understand that we are of life, we are of consciousness, we are of feelings, we are living, conscious, feeling entities. We are from, and we are tied into, and we are able to communicate and talk to and interact with any other being or even thing based upon the fact that we share one great reality that connects all realities. We are of the source, and we are interacting with other entities, conscious entities, and things that are from the same original life force. Now, that can take some layers of peeling back or not, but it's actually pretty simple to understand when we just basically look at the real true nature and identity of the soul entity. This universe is permeated with life. There are very, very many dimensions. There are very many planets. There are very many systems and such, but all are connected by one great reality. In a sense, indeed, we are one. Now, I will leave the further finer points of that for the moment, but let us realize this great and glorious universe that we are in, for all the chaos that seems to be, for all the order that is in actuality there, and for all the modes of being and the themes of existence. Well, we all potentially can or have experienced many things and will continue to do so. So we are not alone. And a simple logical assessment, and with the building up of simple building blocks, to put it that way, we can understand that even as humans were able to contact each other over great spaces and times and do it upon the Earth, this was preliminary training, as it were, and now we are seeing a bigger picture in a galactic sense. This is excellent, and in essence, the extraterrestrials, who are already there in abundance throughout the galaxy right here, let's just keep it small for the moment and say just for this very galaxy, then we are coming of age, as it were, upon this planet to become not just ego-based, singular planetary existent mode beings, to put it in that funny term, but rather we are going into a much bigger and grandiose mode of existence and interaction. As the graduation and ascension comes, and many others have already understood it, then this is the case going on. So we are not alone. The extraterrestrials have been interacting with people on this planet for a very long time, since the inception, and this was a natural thing that was the duty to be performed when extraterrestrial races are terraforming and seeding planets and putting life to have experience with life itself. Basically, God Creator enjoying itself, the universe enjoying itself, and experiencing a variety of things. So we are on this planet growing soul evolution, growing over a period of time, and now reconnecting with the very God that is in us, the gods and goddesses that we always are and already were, and now are unveiling, taking the veil away, and having this idea. So it is no wonder now that with our spiritual as well as technological advancements, we are entering this great, let us say, memory, this great reality, this great awakening into recognizance that we are not alone. We have many friends that are out and about in this fantastic galaxy and beyond. As for this picture, I simply wished to share that the stories of old, the myths, and I do not like the word myth because in the sense that it has a negative connotation in present times. Myth is an old word, mythos, the myth, and simply meant word, handed down word, the oral tradition. So when we are looking at the stories of the past, we have to understand that there were a lot less myths than we might tend to think. We might think the people back in the past were of an unintelligent manner or disposition. We may think that they did not know, or they were just making up things. But rather, when we look at the fact that the same story is repeated worldwide, then we have a very big understanding of there being something a lot more to the myth and legend, but some truth within it, simply and namely that conscious entities having a human experience, humankind, mankind, womankind, humankind, have indeed been interacting with the quote-unquote gods since the very beginning. And civilizations world over, the hierarchy there of the priesthoods, to simplify, or the political bodies, were in essence basing their whole civilization at the heart and at the head around the interaction with the gods and the development of the soul. And in many cases, yes, indeed, the war in the heart between balance and imbalance. You have the fight of good and evil, etc. And these are all different modalities that are potentially available to all. We will indeed find in all cultures and in all places the same story is being told, that the gods assisted mankind and taught them things, right? When we look at that, whether or not you want to say or even believe it at the offset that, oh, it's by default therefore extraterrestrial, the point is, looking at the very stories themselves worldwide, world over, that the same thing is being said. The gods from above came down and taught agriculture, spoke of religion, taught building, various forms, and said that they would be around, they would be watching, and one day, as many quote-unquote legends, but rather, let's say accurate truths, were foretold that they would come back en masse and would see who was naughty and who was nice, sort of thing, as is a concurrent theme. And those who were of a decent disposition, composure, would have an inheritance, and those who were not would have a different sort of inheritance. And we'll get into those things later on, perhaps, or in other videos. But for the moment, suffice it to say that all, whether you believe in ET or not, all of the early legends worldwide spoke of the same things. And that is very important to realize. Now, before I show a few other real-life artworks of just what we were just talking about, we have to understand that the people in the past, of course, did not necessarily have frame of reference or the accurate descriptions and the means in which they would describe, which they would speak about to even themselves, but then again, let alone to themselves, then how much more difficult would it be to speak to others about revelations and actual viewings? Just because humankind did not have such a level of scientific achievement some thousands of years ago, or even some hundreds of years ago, it does not mean that others in the cosmos did not. We did not evolve at the same state throughout the cosmos. The Big Bang, there is no actual one singular Big Bang. It doesn't work exactly like that. There are constant exhalations of the great prime source and inhalations going on at no given place within space. So when someone has an idea that everything started from one point and therefore, by default, everyone must evolve at the same rate, this is a fallible argument. Simply on the fact that on this very earth we can understand that cultures and peoples evolved at different rates within different things that they were successful at, different ways in which they excelled, and in other ways they may not have excelled. And all the races and cultures of this very planet have their quote-unquote pros and cons. And this may simply denote the fact of what was excelled at, what cultures were good at something. For example, some have culminated in scientific achievements and such, and interactions with palpable things, and others were naturally spiritual and had an automatic easy time with spirituality and dimensional awareness, and all and everything in between. So looking back at the stories of the early peoples, like we were saying, though, the story is still the same, and the descriptions are becoming more accurate. We think that a lot of things are sci-fi or fantasy, but when we come to the conclusions with our own viewings and with our own sound mind and heart, looking at the stories of the past, the artworks thereof, looking at encounters that are going on to the very day and even increasing and culminating to a climactic moment, and it certainly is, then we can understand the big picture, and less fiction, less fantasy, more reality. So if you have someone that was a desert mystic or well, it doesn't have to be in the desert, anywhere rather, someone that is in contact with higher dimensions, someone looking for higher truth, and then they ended up having interactions with beings, physical and non-physical, and then they were able to see the craft, the vehicles thereof, then of course they might describe them such as flying discs or shields or chariots, or whatever they might have said to try and depict what they saw. So even though these stories are in the legends and called that, now in modern times when we put the two and two together, we can understand that they were talking about the same things that are being seen today. So this is very good for us to put those puzzle pieces linked together so that we have a good idea that it is not fantasy and fiction, but the stories of the past are actually more accurate than we would have thought. Now, I'm going to be showing a few pictures. I'm just going to go through them quickly. A lot of people are familiar with, oh, here's a bad word, aliens, but aliens in ancient art and the ancient astronaut theory, etc. It's not a theory, it is indeed a reality. The important thing to look at, though, is not to say, here is a statue or a carving, etching out of what could be interpreted as an astronaut, but looking at this very figure himself, we cannot say by 100% default, therefore, that is extraterrestrial in some sort of astronaut type mask and all that and suit. But what we can instead look at even before coming to that conclusion is simply the fact that here is a story talking about beings, what have often been called gods, who had the ability of flight, who had advancement spiritually and technologically, even though in the past the peoples of the planet here might not have said may not have had the vocabulary technological advancement, but the fact is they certainly did have an understanding of, well, look, here's an advanced being of high intelligence coming down from the sky, sharing things with people, saying that they would watch, saying that they would return. This story being concurrent and fluent throughout the whole planet. Every single people had the same story. So when we look at the fact that this etching is made after such a story and made to stand the test of time and talk about the same so-called legends, which are actually histories, however exaggerated or not, however changed over time or not, but the actual intention and the purpose of making the artwork to stand the test of time, to simply say that this is real, and now it is very unique and wonderful that it is coming back full circle for the people in the modern times and for the future. And the Wandjina of Australia. Again, it is the same story being told, the gods that came down to assist, even Star Wars, even fallen gods, fallen angels, all these sort of dimensional beings and even biological beings. When we look at the picture here, we could immediately say, oh, it's a gray or it's a ghost. But when we look at the fact of what the people were talking about, of the gods who came down and the gods that could take their craft and go underwater and live underwater and come out and go as they please, well, we have to understand, were they talking about ghosts, or were they talking about some kind of god, some kind of being that had advanced technologies and intelligences? When we look at the very legends themselves and say, would someone really go to such great length and en masse and in a collective worldwide if they're basing it purely on a myth? It seems a little bit ridiculous to go to such lengths and do painstaking, especially some stone carvings and temples that have been made based upon these stories and these histories being handed down just for the fun of it, just to make it up. It would seem a little bit ridiculous. The fact is, the people who made these, some of the mystics or seers, or call them as we will, many of them probably knew that their artworks would indeed withstand the test of time, and that future generations would be able to look at it with a greater accuracy. When we stop, or when we cease to think that the people of the past were stupid, and they certainly were not, then we can understand maybe they were trying to share the same message. Now, the thing to note is, when people to this very day, to the right now and to tomorrow, are still having experiences and interactions with beings who look just like these guys you see right on the stone, to the very day, then it is not indeed a myth. There is a great truth to it. Does it mean that it is a biological entity or more of a spiritual kind? The fact is, people are still experiencing it to the very day and will tomorrow. And that is a truth, and that is a fact. So when we put that together and can agree upon that, then we can begin the basis of having a discussion and having some sound levels of reason towards this topic, rather than just say it's not real, etc. So looking at the facts for themselves, people are still seeing these beings to the day. Back then they said, oh, it's the gods, and there was a Star Wars and fallen angels, and they come and go as they please in their craft, and they go in the water and all sorts of things, and they have interactions with people. And from then until now, the same thing is being said. Well, it is no wonder, because it is based on truth, not just a made-up story. So let's look at that. We'll get on to the motives in a minute, but let's indeed look at that. Again, the same types of things. Whether it was Egypt or Greece or Africa somewheres, or Australia somewheres, or South America or Central America somewheres, anywhere we could think of, in Europe somewheres, the fact is the same stories are being told. When we have the stories passed down talking about the gods being there, being present, trying to manage things, having ideas, even having fights amongst each other, we have different factions coming out. And then they're putting the stories down on oral tradition and on artwork. We understand that maybe there is indeed a great reality to it, as we keep repeating. So whether we are looking at beings that are of good intent or of bad intent or of neutral, the fact is the same stories are, again, repeating throughout history and up into the present day. Experiences with beings who look like the ones you see right here, and their craft that are also depicted upon the walls, and perhaps to also depict auric energies and dimensional or scientific apparatus and abilities and etc. that are able to do certain things, or the powers, quote-unquote, thereof. Then we understand that there is a great truth to it. Whether we are looking at beings of good intention that are speaking of light and assistance, or beings that did indeed negatively influence, because this is very important for us to look at. When human beings talked about the gods, and we're talking indeed about dimensional entities, and also even just biological entities of different kinds, different frequencies, then they were talking about interactions that they had, because when they say that these beings interacted and said such and such, and then humans actually carried out these things, here's a very important thing for us to look at, and a good part of my argument is the fact that people were influenced so much by these things. To what extent is it a myth? In the very original sense, we find it a little bit silly to try to think that humans would commit sacrifices and murders or all sorts of things based originally purely on just a myth. Not to say that some people cannot get carried away in some psychosis or some exaggerated moment or something like that. But what I'm saying is, when we are tying all these pieces together, it is unique indeed, or rather, it is to the point, and what I mean to say is non-coincidental, that the same things are being said and the same outcomes are being had. When we have many stories of tribal peoples throughout the world having interactions with each other, living, surviving, hunting, gathering, etc., procreating and all that, living, breathing, dying, and they were suddenly visited by high-dimensional beings or godlike beings who taught them such and such, and then they learned how to farm, they learned how to do this, they learned how to contact, they even were taught how to contact these beings, and it was for the good and good intentions, and then these peoples on the earth made great civilizations. That is a fact, it is an outcome. If we trace back the generations from now to the past, we see that it has all been like a ride, it's like a domino effect going from then till now. And we also see the fact that there have been negative influences. There have been civilizations based upon horrendous things, human sacrifice, murders, and when we look at the original ideas of where these things came about, more often than not, and all cultures worldwide at some point or another were guilty of the bad as well as the good and as well as the neutral, is to say that their very stories talk about gods or beings who said, do this, sacrifice to us. We have that in the Bible, slaughter the lamb or kill the ram, this fatted calf, etc. And we also have the human sacrifice aspect. So going from east to west, north to south, we have, for example, as is popularly known in Mesoamerica and South America and places like this, we also have the very brutal realities of human sacrifice on a daily basis or in a numerous amount. And the fact is, the people did this because they thought that it was pleasing the gods. So who were these gods and of what type were they and what were their motives? It is very important for us to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and we will get more into that in just a moment. Once again, I'm not even going to say anything for this picture, but rather look at the carving, the being etched in stone, out of stone, sculpted, and try to imagine why it was made and what the story is behind the being. A cute myth to scare the kids or get them to do something, or is it based upon something? To have such power and accuracy in the world and to be concurrent throughout the world does suggest a lot of things, especially when we are finding similar looking beings to each other all over the world where people did not contact each other or talk about it. We see that there's a great truth to it, not just a myth as in a made up story from nothing, but a myth as in a handed down oral tradition based upon a truth. The classic Easter Island. Here again we have these massive figures, and they do pretty much seem to be looking up. They look human, but perhaps a little bit different, a little more elongated skulls, noses and such, and they are looking up to the heavens. We must ask the integral question, when these figures were carved to such painstaking degrees, it's not just looking at it and go, oh, that's convenient, that's nice, and skipping on. It's a fact of each one of these took a while to do. They were going deep into the ground, so they suggest having been around for some time. There are stories of modern day scholars or scientists saying, oh, it's just a few hundred years, but others are saying, well, now that we've been digging up more, it actually seems like the story is going a lot further back than that. Someone can be free to do their own research and not be lazy and just take only someone's word for it. As a matter of fact, I'll just say it now, don't take my word necessarily for anything I'm going to say on here, but I rather would have someone come to conclusions upon their own inner searchings and their own outer searchings, to put it this way simply. Now, look for yourself. When you see these massive, very numerous, and this is just showing a row of these figures, but there was actually quite a little handful of these figures on Easter Island, then we can see that a great painstaking degree of effort was put into it, and the legends speaking of, again, beings from above, and the figures are looking up. Were the humans not saying, hey, we're looking at you too, and we're waiting for you to come back? This is something we can look at. The original stories have to be looked at, and the very artworks and the things themselves need to be examined so that we can have an understanding as to why they were made in the first place. And even if we had no stories at all, what does it say just simply by looking at them? Again, as with a couple slides ago, we have very similar looking beings. Here's another very old stone etching. What is being described? Were the people not showing the same sorts of things, the same type of entities worldwide? Well, we can understand that this is again a concurrent theme, something going on throughout the globe. Then we can understand that the reality of it is very real, and all the more when people are still having interactions with similar looking beings to the very day. That itself says a lot, and we must examine, therefore, whether our opinion is positive or negative or neutral towards the ET phenomenon. Do we not at least understand that people are having similar artworks and are giving proclamations of the same things? And indeed, as many of us personally have had our own experiences with beings of different sorts, and then we can put it together and say, well, there certainly is a reality here, not just something made up. The ET phenomenon is real, but it is also interdimensional. There's also many things to look at. There are beings who are out about in space. There are beings who are quarantined here. There are the ghosts of fallen angels, which we'll talk about. There's the demons, the archons, and many beings we can talk about, and these are the different names. Names don't really matter. The fact is, different themes of animation. So we're talking about beings who are of love and integrity and wisdom, and beings who are more self-serving and malicious and based upon fear and pride. And we're seeing that this is within the human being, but it is also within other entities. We have it within animals. We see that we can examine that with other life that is on the very planet. What is what I mean to say? Therefore, we can understand that this is something that is also perhaps indeed real on a bigger galactic scale and more. A lot of people are familiar with the famous Nazca Lines of Peru. Here's just a very quick one. The famous landing pad, or landing zone rather, the runway, the landing way, whatever we like to call it. The fact is, when the people of the past made this, and again took great painstaking efforts to make these, this is on a very massive scale, is it not? And to simply say, oh, it was just based on a cute myth, well, let's make up something for the kids, and therefore, because it's just a myth, let's make something huge, and let's make big spiders, and let's make a little large-headed figure carved on a mountain, and let's do giant birds, right? These are some of the very famous or important Nazca lines that were made. So when we look at the fact that when we ask the peoples and to look at what the ancestors had said, who we talk about, we hear stories of not necessarily modern scholars in every aspect, or modern scientists in every aspect, but and some of which are very good and have good integrity. But the fact is, the very stories themselves should not be discredited. When you have someone coming in saying, oh, well, it's just this, and passing it off and shrugging it off, saying it has to do with irrigation system or making, I don't know, the water to flow, or toiletry systems, sewage, I don't know. People make up all sorts of things based upon their level of experience with things in general. So when we are going to be a little more maybe realistic and look at ask those who did it, or see what the ancestors are saying with the current offspring up to the moment, then we can get an idea. When we look at them ourselves, even apart from all of that, what is our natural conclusion drawn? It seems a bit silly to say that this was just based upon for the fun of it or for a myth. Indeed, human history and the scholastic systems leading up until now, based upon histories up until now, well, there are within every single human being a conflict of interest, to say, trying to find ignorance versus knowledge, and the fight of balance and imbalance. And even within ourselves we have this, so therefore we have varying opinions amongst each other as conscious feeling entities. So it's not to say one person's idea is necessarily superior, but it is to look at the thing for itself and the big picture of what is being revealed at this time, what is coming to a head. There is a climactic moment that has been building up until now, and we are going to live and experience it. Indeed. Well, another famous picture. We're looking at depictions and artworks of things that were seen by people, whether they saw it in the live waking day or whether they saw it in visions and dreams. The fact is, when someone a very long time ago, whether they saw it in actuality or whether they had it in a dream or a prophecy handed down to them, the fact is these are things said, and the objects are not necessarily going with the flow of the times in which the person was speaking about them. So, in other words, when or where throughout history people did not have access to helicopters and hovercraft and flying ships, and yet we're talking about them and trying to describe them, what does that say? Did they do that because it was false and just a cute thing to do, or because it was a reality that they saw or perceived in one way or the other, shape, way, or form? Again, this is very important for us to realize. Even up until somewhat recently, even many of the Native American holy men and seers and women as well, when they were having visions of the future, and they themselves were seeing cars and airplanes, and they said, oh, these are the things to come, and behold, just but a few centuries later, this is exactly what happened. So, from ancient past up until very much relatively recent history, of the same stories going on. Now, of course, there are people even now who are seeing things and speaking about things that this planet has yet to see, and yet will see. And some people have seen. When we're talking about very advanced aircraft, for example, and people are actually seeing this in the live waking day or the live night, with being awake as you are now and as I am right now at the time of the recording, well, we understand that this is based upon a reality. When these things become more and more tangible to us and usable, and it can be experienced in a personal way, then of course no more proof necessary, but rather the echo comes back and say, well, told you so. So this is funny how we see that this pattern is repeating throughout history, reciprocating or perpetuating rather throughout history up until now, and the same things that were happening in the past, speaking of futuristic things, are still to the day going on. We're not the end of the story. There's more to go ahead of us, of course. So interesting to see the artworks and the stories behind, and indeed what is being said, what is being shared for people to see. These things were put in stone so that they would be a testimony to withstand the test of time, and people could have a very lovely chuckle and a very awe-inspiring moment within revelation when they see, wow, this is said back then, and lo and behold, today we have these things, and more is coming out. So we are tying past and future, and all somehow belonging to a great now, if we may even put it that way. Now, we have paintings of, and this is not just within Christian art, but Christian art is a great example of the ancient astronaut story. When we have people speaking about the gods and the angels, what did they mean in every single way? We must not simply understand that the people were just purely speaking of the spiritual only, because we have instances even throughout the Bible where angels were tangible beings, where they're perceived as humans, when they entertain angels unawares. When we have even he who was called later Israel was wrestling with the angel. What is it? When Jacob was having a fight with the angel, and the angel said, let me go, I have to go. And the gentleman said, not until you give me a blessing. He was literally holding him down. And when I first read that, I thought that was quite interesting. So what happened? The angel touched him, what was it, on the hip bone or on the thigh, and caused injury, and then he was let go, and then was able to go back up. We have many stories of this, not just within a classic Judeo-Christian sense, but worldwide, all religions and cultures, speaking of the gods, the angels, having tangible, palpable interactions with humankind. So this is indeed to suggest that they are not purely limited to the spiritual at all. When we are understanding such things as the gods and the angels saying that they were there and that they would return, and they would always be watching and helping, and that they would oversee things, even some bad things that had to occur, then we can get a bigger picture of what's going on. So, for example, there have been many stories of people having visions, and people having actual live, waking, physical interactions and encounters with beings who looked very human, were very tangible, who seemed to be spiritually powerful or endowed or evolved rather, or however we might like to put it, as well as technological. Now, I myself will say it further in a moment, but I have had my own very real experience on a circular craft with, and you may believe me or not, but your belief or not does not change the truth of it. This is a very real story and experience for me, and I myself was on a ship not very long ago, back a few years ago from the time of the recording, and was in a ship with beings, and I'll get further on with that in a few slides. But suffice it to say, people have had interactions with human-looking ETs as well as non-necessary, well, let's say humanoid, but not necessarily human-looking ETs, since time immemorial up to the present, and will indeed tomorrow in the future. We have to understand this part of the family, but we have to understand that spirituality has everything to do with it. It is not just we're living for nothing and we die and cease to be. Someone has to have the real accuracy of identity with the self, with the soul, and realizing that all that has been going on has been for the soul, has been for you, has been for I, not for the body, has been for us as living entities. We are eternal, we are immortal, soul entity consciousness, and we go from the source and return. But the fact is, all of this has been for our learning. The whole earth process has been for our growth and for our lessons. And when we see that it's not just a fluke, or we're all on our own left to destroy ourselves or not, but that there have been stories worldwide saying that there were gods and angels watching us and helping, well, it's because it is very real, not because it is false. Again, just to show this picture quickly, as many of you have probably seen this, but for those who have not, when we look at the top right and top left corners, we are seeing humans within, well, you judge for yourselves what you think you see. When we understand the stories thereof, when we understand the connection, when we understand that God is not against science and technology, when we understand the unity of all things, then we can see that there's not contradictions or necessarily needing to be a conflict of interest or ideas, but rather a unison of things. When we have people saying that they debunk the ancient astronaut theory, well, they haven't done that whatsoever. We have people debunking the debunkers. The fact of the matter is, we look at all these things clearly and without fear and within a naked eye and with a very open heart, and say, I wish to know the truth and see it as it is, not as I wish it to be. Or have I been conditioned to see it a certain way? What is my own very own experience with things? Then we can try to have a greater picture. For example, someone who is very staunch and religious, and I used to myself be to some degree a very somewhat staunch Christian, even though I always believed in reincarnation. But the fact is, I had my belief systems, and then I started to put other pieces together and say, oh well, that's also true. I myself have personally seen flying ships in the sky, nighttime, and sometimes even in the day, some interesting things. So when I put the pieces together and said, oh well, it doesn't mean that just because there's a spaceship that is demonic, right? You start to put these things together and you get a bigger picture. We have to have a differentiation, we have to have a sound judgment. But the fact is, again, from ancient past up until more and more modern times, and this painting is only a few centuries old, then we understand that the same stories are being told and what is being talked about. Because some people could see this picture and say, oh, it's just the sun chasing the moon, or it's just to denote the god of light chasing the dark one, or something like that. But what are the deeper layers of what is being said? What does that even mean? The dark one being chased by the light one, or something like that. We have to understand the very grand details of it. So when we're putting those pieces together with other facts and figures and things, then we can have within us a non-conflict but a greater idea of what is the truth of what is going on. There's a conflict going on within our hearts, and learning and leaving ignorance behind, and leaving lesser modalities of being in emotional imbalances and going to higher wisdom and emotional balance, loving understandings, and an acceptance of truth, and a self-confidence and a self-acceptance and an approval of things. And whether or not to whatever degrees we have that, let's look at the fact that We are evolving, soul evolving to something, and we know a little more in details and accuracies than we did in the past. So it is, things are coming to a clearer light, but it is not certainly to say people in the past were stupid at all. They weren't. They just were not having the exposure to certain technologies, for example, or levels of truth, but it has been a process ongoing, leading up until, as we keep saying, the ascension, the resurrection, the climactic moment that is happening. Now, just because on Earth we see only human beings, yet we have to understand that even among human beings we see a wonderful variety and differentiation. Even though we are one, even though we all have one consciousness talking to itself, basically, not to say that we are all the same with no individuality. What I rather mean is life talks to itself. We all can smile at each other, we can laugh, we can cry, we feel the same things. We are indeed, in our level of prime source, we are indeed of one. And interesting to note that this Earth has seen and does possess various cultures and race types. Well, this is not for no reason, because this is simply a way of training us to realize that there is even a bigger story out in the cosmos. So while we have white, black, yellow, and red, the four colors of man, or add whatever or take away whatever you like, but we have a variety of peoples here, and yet we all have similar we all live and die, we all breathe, we all eat and sleep, etc. Getting our life experiences, we are all one, even though we are different. So it is not to say, like, if there had been, for example, if there had been a race of humans that had blue skin walking on this planet, we wouldn't have think it was strange or foreign. It would just be a normal thing. It would just be something that was natural. Like, for example, if we were introduced to, well, let me rephrase this. If indeed there are beings who have blue skin, I'm talking about the gentleman on the left with a beautiful painting, the good artwork that the person did for this picture. The fact is, if a being such as that exists, and certainly does, then if we see the gentleman or a beings or type of beings or a lady, for that example, that looks like that, male, female, young and old, well, are we going to be automatically frightened? And if we are, is it not simply because it is something that it appears to us or seems to be to us unknown? Is it a fear of the unknown? If the being is able to speak with us and communicate love and have friendly gestures and the same sort of endeavors, and even perhaps some of them being in a superior mode and trying to help us, well, why should we have instantaneously or off the offset fear? What is the fear based upon? Now, as to the second from the left, the blonde gentleman, we can understand that this being looks very much like us, and if we saw them on the streets, or anywhere for that matter, we would not even know that they necessarily were of a different non-Terran origin. Now, I myself personally have seen what could be called in common jargon or whatnot, or parlance of the times, the tall blonde or Nordic types. And without a shred of a doubt, when I saw one particular gentleman on a very popular street one summer night some years ago, I knew without a second doubt that he was one of them. And the look of the eyes, the wisdom, the intensity, not intense as in aggressive, but just the soul evolution of the being, looking me right in the eyes, not even saying a word and just speaking volumes, was incredible. And other people have had experiences like this, and other people have had telepathic communications and even verbal communications, because these beings can't talk if they want to in a language that is available to assist us or to be acceptably and understood by us. So when people are having interactions with beings that look like this, and we can understand that as we have on Earth, black, white, red, yellow, and brown, etc., whatever, and we understand that just because it is the case here does not necessitate that every planet out there, if indeed possessing life, has to have the same figures or types everywhere. Well, we can understand maybe there is blue and green and red and all sorts of, like, I mean real red, orange for that matter, whatever we can think of. So we can understand that as it is on Earth is not necessarily as it is elsewhere, but there are still common themes of existence. There are still love and positive vibrations and good intellect leading towards higher wisdom and integrity, and then of course the opposite, regressive, which, and here's our segue right into the next guy, the classic gray. The classic gray has been seen a lot, but also has been promoted a lot. And pop culture, to call it that, I find a little bit too much, has given a lot of fear factor. He's not necessarily a very attractive looking being, for most people perhaps. Maybe some might argue others in their opinion. The fact of the matter is, a lot of these types of beings have been seen. I myself have seen one in my room in not physical, tangible form, but in a more of a different dimension, but the same exact shape and size thereof, etc. And this was after I had woken up from some kind of dream or awareness that there was a presence in my room. And I'll get on to fear attacks and shadow attacks and such in a moment. I do have a somewhat popular video on that, shadow people and sleep paralysis. You may be free to look at that. Yes, some of it does have to do with the greys and reptiles and archons. Call it what we will, demons, old hag. Yes, this is all part of it. But the fact is, many people have been experiencing this from the past to the present and will tomorrow. This is a real entity, a real race of beings. And they mainly have been experienced in a more of a negative sense. It is not to say that every single being that is tall and thin and bald is a bad entity. Certainly and absolutely not. There are some who would look like them who would not be like that at all, but a lot of people are having negative experiences, abductions. And again, we'll get into abductions in a moment, but a lot of abductions have to do with not even physical being taken anywhere, but astrally taken somewhere and being deceived to think they were taken aboard a ship, whereas they were not. We'll get into Star Wars in a moment or two, but let us realize that the experiences with the beings you're seeing on the screen right here are very real and are very much accurate. Whether, this is a very good artwork and nice, I guess it's a nice painting, but the fact is they may have slight variances, and there are of course many more different races than just these four, but this is to cover two basic good ones and two basic bad ones, to call it that, regressive versus positive, you might say. So when we examine this and examine that people are having these experiences from past up until present and will tomorrow and in future times, then we can understand the reality of it. If you are someone who has not had experience and you are humming and hawing or are not certain or are being influenced, we also can understand when we consider the sources. People that have had experiences with very real beings who themselves are very much telling the truth, not those who are telling a lie, or not those who are accidentally or unintentionally speaking an untruth, like saying something that's not true but not meaning to. So we have truth, untruth, and deliberate lie. We can understand looking at the source of the person and their integrity and such. Someone that is swearing to be of service to light and to others, and I certainly am myself. For all my faults, I certainly am in service to others, and in a light way and in a grand hope for everybody, as are countless others. So we understand that the integrity of people versus the integrity of others. So when we see in popular Hollywood culture, when we see alien invasion movies and fear-mongering and all these wars and you better prepare yourself because they're coming, this is all negative stuff and is based upon, in many cases, a falsity. The beings who are human beings who are aligned with regressive negative beings because they themselves are about service to small self and are selfish and are violent and would do anything to achieve their means, do not have a great emotional balance or moral integrity. It is no wonder that they are aligned with entities and fallen angels and fallen ghosts of fallen angels of the same kind, and they would themselves say the guys in the sky are bad, whereas it is the opposite. The ones we see in the sky, by and large and for the most part, are indeed good, and of a majority good, and seek to quarantine and even teach those of a negative sort, if and where possible. So when we see those in service to self aligning with similar vibration beings, it's no wonder. And then when we see beings of love and integrity aligning with similar aligned beings of similar integrity and worth, then it is no wonder. So let us really look at that and understand that this is all very real, and the beings who appear of such, for whatever dimensional existence they live in, 3D, 4D, 5D, beyond, that it is real, it is being experienced on a daily basis worldwide, not limited or not exclusive to one. So let us really examine that and know that. Now, as for the classic gray entity, if you'll allow me, then we are looking at, in many cases, negative experiences, abduction stories. It is very, very important to understand the reality of these beings, that they're very real, that most of them that look like this, that interact with humans, are of a more negative or at least neutral variety as opposed to purely positive. So when we can realize that this is happening and is a worldwide global thing, and that the existence of these beings is not just limited to this planet per se, then we understand that, well, as here, supposedly elsewhere, right? As below, so above, microcosm, macrocosm. But the fact is, whether, and here's a very important thing I wish to say, whether or not we wish to call them by a certain name, we can merely understand the simplicity of being and not thing. When we're taking away shape and form, oh, I want to call them archons, I want to call them demons, no, it's actually jinn, no, it's this and that. Put away the differences. The fact is, there are positive beings looking towards soul, real, true soul evolution and in growth in light and love and wisdom, and then there are those entities who are not. It is within the heart, it is within the being. So putting form and shape aside and not just being egotistical and childish and limiting it to just one planet, could this be elsewhere too? Has not the same story that has been going on this planet been seen elsewhere? Of course it has. And will it not be seen elsewhere in the future? Of course it will. So, nothing new under the sun, but this is also to say the center sun of the universe, which is anywhere. But my point being, not to think that we are alone. This is some great mystery that and it's leading to a bad conclusion. This is not something that has not been seen before, and many of the stories and many of the preferences of description we like to use, the fact is, as to what I'm showing on the screen and to the races, that these beings are very real, whatever we wish to call them, whatever dimensions they're being experienced, because it can be more than just one. And the fact is not to be afraid, because when we are afraid and when we are putting fear first and we're saying, trust me, I know more than you, and it's a bad story, that is a mode of ignorance, that is giving up power, that is saying to yourself that you have put fear ahead of love, that you have put darkness ahead of light, you have put a mode of ignorance ahead of a mode of knowledge. And we have to be very cautious when we are making an assessment, especially when we do not have our own experiences. Because if we don't have our own experience, or we have just a little bit of experience, then by our one experience we cannot, like say for someone had no experience at all, then how much of an authority could they be to talk about these things? If someone had one experience and it was just bad, what kind of authority could they be? If someone had just one experience and it was only good, what kind of authority could they be? The fact is, not any of us, there's no one of us that has all the answers to all things, but the fact is, when we do put a lot of pieces together, when we are weighing out the many similarities, then we see that there is a great truth to it. So to repeat that, let us really understand that is the reality of the matter. And that it is taking place on a soul level. Now, I chose these quote-unquote grays look a little more cute and not so harmful. I wanted to simply say that, again, not all experiences with beings that are naked and bald, just to say it like that, are necessarily regressive. There can be some that are not. My own experience with a small bald entity has been in the live waking day while I was changing my son's diaper. This is a true story, and I put it in about.com paranormal. And it's also written in my book, which I'll put a link to in the description of the video. So, when we have our own experiences with something, and when we are hearing the stories of others, and we are hearing that there is some positive, some negative, some neutral, with small grays, for example, then we can understand that basing upon actual experiences and the commonality, as it were, with them, then we can see that there's what is the truth and what is the untruth of the matter. Now, when I had my experience with this small bald being, basically was a small entity about 1.5 feet, 2 feet tall, that literally was tiptoeing into the living room while I was changing my son's diaper on the couch, and he was sort of translucent. Like he wasn't. I easily and intuitively and assessed quickly, deduced quickly that he was not in the physical world, but I was able to clearly see there was a perfect outline. There was a sort of a grayish coloration, or it's hard to really describe it, but others have seen it. You may look at the famous picture of the little bald alien or gnome in the park in Chile. You can look up that. And I had a similar experience myself. So it's not a matter of taking someone else's word. When I have my own experience and then I look at the testimonies and alleged testimonies of others that are saying that they're true, then I can say, okay, well, yes, and you do that for yourself. So again, a lot of people have had bad experiences. There's a common consensus that the short grays work for the larger ones and that they're more of a worker class and they're usually very rude and cold with human beings. Well, I myself personally cannot testify that this is the case for all of them. I really cannot say. The one that I saw did not give me any fear whatsoever. When he saw that I saw him, and I'm just saying him because I really don't know him, her, the being, I think, wanted me to see him, and then after that was established, disappeared, literally vanished from view. Whereas prior he was seen for some good 10-15 seconds, quite clearly and quite in a conscious state, full cognition, full ability of mental and emotional stability for me. Whether my son saw him or not, I don't know. I think he was only about 1.5 at the time. But that's the case. So the good, the bad, the ugly, the neutral, what's going on, these are the stories, these are the experiences being had. Now, here's a somewhat haunting picture, the classic abduction type scenario. There are very, very many stories of interactions with good beings and being taken aboard ships and going to different places and not being in a negative state. There are a lot of stories of negative experience, or at least perceived as negative experience. Again, the beings that have been encountered, all shapes, colors, and sizes, and some people have had wonderful experiences, have been taken up, have been allowed a quick tour of the stars, have been given information, have been given a healing, and some people have perceived very bad things going on. They are very frightened. Well, as to whether or not the experiences of abduction were intended to be or not, this is something for us to differentiate, because someone could have a bad experience whereas it really was bad, or intended as bad, some kind of trickery or implants that are for the negative, not the positive, if this is a reality. And then of course we have that which was perceived as bad, which was not intended to be. So the classic analogy I like to use is simply this. Like, let's just say when you take a cat or a dog or an animal or whatnot to the vet clinic, or even a child, or even yourself, you go to the doctor. Like, go to the animal goes to the vet, you go to the doctor. But let's just use the animal example. The animal that is being held down by these tall beings and a needle inserted, and it's having, the animal could, in many cases, perceive it as very negative. From the animal's point of view, they would say, if they would talk to us, oh, it was scary, it was horrible, they held me down, they did stuff to me, they put stuff in me, man. They could speak along this sort of manner. And for them, it would be perceived as a very negative experience, whereas there was no intention of harm. In very many cases, and in so many cases, and thousands upon thousands of stories from people, what are the beings very often saying? Please don't be afraid, we're not here to hurt you. Now, even if, and here's another interesting thing to realize too, and I'm not trying to defend those who are bad, I will call evil evil and good good, not a problem, but I'm saying we could find it interesting that even when someone had a negative experience, or what was perceived as a negative experience, what happened? Most often, in the majority of stories and testimonies, the person or persons were put back into their bed. They were not caused a lasting harm. Well, I mean, that's not fair for me to say. There could be some trauma or this and that, or suppressed feelings and thoughts, but the fact is, in so many cases, and what seems to be the majority, the person who had the abduction experience was put back into their bed and pretty much unscathed. So that itself should say something, even if there was malice or mind control or some sort of evil intended. The fact is, the person was put back and pretty much had their, possessed and retained their full faculty. and had a story to tell, had a book to write, had a testimony to share. So the fact is, I am not saying that all abduction stories were only perceived as bad, but they were all good. What I'm saying is, let us look at these very facts themselves and try and weigh out the differences. Now, this picture is most likely just something man-made, rubber or whatever. But the fact is, such a being like this, certainly looking similar to this or exactly like this, does exist. I myself have had a viewing of an entity looking very much like this, and also lying down. It's a long, difficult story to explain, perhaps, but it has to do with remote viewing and being allowed to do so. The fact is, whether or not this is a real entity or not, the fact is there are entities that look very much just like this. This one seems to be asleep or injured or sick and dying, etc. The fact is, we can understand that in pop culture there seems to be a lot of emphasis upon the negative things, but we have to remember that there is a lot of equally or more, if not more, than of positive. So when we have Hollywood, and we have to look at who runs Hollywood and who is sort of the movers and shakers behind the scenes and the motives and the attentions. If we look at people that are about self-interest and about using and making, I'm not saying all Hollywood directors and all actors are bad. Certainly not. What I'm saying is, when we look at the fact that there are cults and there are groups of persons who seek to influence humankind, not necessarily for the good, but when we see self-interested groups that are behind running the show, and they flaunt their their symbols and their Freemasonic and Illuminati symbols and such, they're proud of their things. When and where, not in all cases. I'm not saying all of them are bad, but when and where we see these concurrent themes of alien invaders and bad things, as if to say all beings from outer space are against us or something like that. When we consider the sources, basically what I'm saying is, when we consider movies and stories and books and consider the sources of them, who is aligned with what? Is the person that is speaking or sharing something a sincere individual? Do they have a love for humanity? Do they wish the best for people? Or rather the opposite, are they self-interested, full of fear and pride, and are trying to compete with others, trying to control others for the negative? You see, there are a lot of people on this planet who know that those out in space are the good guys in so very many cases, and they don't want to have anything to do with them because they know that then their works will be shown up as bad as they are. And so they will say to people, oh, those guys are your enemy, and they're the enemy, they're the threat of mankind, whereas it is not true whatsoever. So it's not to say that there are not bad beings that we should be afraid of in a variety of ways and in dimensions. We should be afraid of other humans. Some people are, well, put it as we will, or state it as we will. There are some people that are not friendly or not very kind, who are self-interested, who would seek to take advantage, opportunistic, violent, manipulative, etc. These are very real in humankind. What's to say of other beings? The soul is the same apart from shape and form, as we said. So those who are of a similar essence or vibration, or are motivated of certain animations, of themes of being, align with their own kind. The thief joins with the thief. The liar enjoys lying with other liars. I mean, they're going to fight each other too, but the fact is, we look at the similarities. There are many people who are saying that, based on their own true experiences, that a lot of extraterrestrial races are indeed good. They should be getting more spotlight. We're not necessarily, by and large, only going to get it from Hollywood, so we have to consider again the sources. Now, as for not the worst, not the best picture, but as for a draconian race, we can understand that entities who operate on a lower frequency or in competitive mode can be very real. They can be very experienced. We cannot blame all problems on Earth on ET races that are bad. We cannot say, oh, it's the bad gods, it's all the fallen angels' fault, it's all Satan's fault, it's all this and that. Each person can come to accept levels of how should we say it? You have responsibility to the self. A person is here to learn and grow with self-responsibility. We understand that unless literally forced into something, we are not always to put blame on others. What I mean to say is that it is not to say that there has not been manipulation and control, but it is to say that if we when and where an individual or groups of people agreed upon something or not, then how much fault is to be had. I'm not going to say shake away and give excuses, but what I'm trying to say is taking away shape and form and not just saying it's just this one planet, but looking on a universal way of the mode of being. We understand, again, emotional balance, general desire to grow in light and wisdom versus and being in compassion and service to others, as well as improving yourself. But you're along the theme of let's rise as a team, as opposed to those who are competitive, selfish, addicted to conflict, addicted to competition of different kinds. Then we see that it's not limited to a shape and form. So whether we want to say it's the Draconians' fault or the Greys' fault, or those work for those, no, the Reptilians work for the Archons, no, it's the... Take away all those words and shapes and forms. It is about themes of existence. So when we can look at these and these experiences, and we can even realize that in many cases, let's put it this way, we are not seeing in the live waking day, in a physical waking day, for what we perceive with our human bodies. These sort of entities, it is very, very indeed rare. Are they being encountered underground, etc., because they're not really being seen on the surface so much. But the fact is, are people having real encounters and experiences? Are there beings like this that are operating from a space level with their own craft? Are they also interdimensional? When they die and they go into spirit form, in what case do they exist? So are they operating in a 4D level and they're still being predators? All these things we can look at, but the grand fact of the matter is we may certainly understand the bigger picture going on, and that the universal themes taking place and the polarities and dualities that this whole entity is learning and unlearning and relearning, then we see that there's nothing really to fear, because what is within one person is the potential, let's reword it, the potential of one is also the potential of another. So the people of Earth are divided between those who are selflessly trying to help others, those who are sort of neutral on the fence, just living their life, surviving, doing the best they can, trying to figure it out, and then those who are deliberately working for bad and for, trying to serve little self even at the cost of others. And that is the point to realize. Predator mentality versus benevolent mentality. Now, beings who have looked like, so we have the classic draconian or reptilian race. Stories of this go back very far into the past. We have the story of the dragon. Who is the dragon? What is the dragon? It goes very far back into the past. It is in all cultures, planet-wide. We have the stories in Europe of, St. George slaying the dragon and different things like this. And we have the flying dragons of Asia. We have, even in Mesoamerica and South America, we have the story of the feathered serpent, the flying reptile. What does this mean? Is it based upon a myth only? If people are still experiencing these types of beings to the day, and yes, and for this picture, often they come into appear to people wearing a cloak, wearing some sort of hood, basically covering their body. Is it perhaps because they're cold? We could say many things, but the fact is, the stories being told back from the past, handed down, if they are similar to the present, then what does it say? If people are experiencing and witnessing these types of beings, and these types of beings having to do with flying craft, well, are we hearing a lot of stories about murders and kidnappings, or are we hearing, along the lines of people witnessing and experiencing and encountering, but nothing bad and much coming of it? So it is a variety of things. We can also look at the fact that, indeed, have there not been cults of beings that have sort of pushed and prompted humans to do such horrific things? Are there stories of good reptilian beings? Well, there certainly are. There are stories of encounters with beings who were not necessarily malicious or appeared to cause any harm whatsoever. So it is really to look at all of these things. Again, we link the past to the present, and we try to examine the future and look at the nowness of it all, and say, what's the story going on? Who is motivated by what, and who is working for what? All of which are very important for us to understand. Now, we look at some negative. I want to get more into the positive. There are very, very, very many encounters with holy, benevolent beings, good angels. This is a lovely picture. It's been modified a lot. There are many different versions of this picture. You can probably see that a lot on Google Images. I hope that there's no problem in taking these pictures for the presentation. We have here angelsheaven.org. And just a wonderful, wonderful piece of art. Now, what we indeed have is a family of evolved beings having form and shape who are about love, balance, wisdom, growth, real soul evolution into the higher dimensions. The lower dimensions that are about fear and anger and aggression and violence and small service to self, the modes in which this operates is only in a lower level, is only quarantined, as it were, to a 3D reality. 4D is the highest that they would be able to go for the most part, even though there is ultimately an allowance for the necessary adversary, so that we would have a means to not just be only perfect self, like as if God was just one entity and never experienced its own creation. We are all it. We are all expressions of the great source, the great God, the isness, the universe. People say multiverse, but even for a multiverse, it's still a universe. It's not separate to each other in the sense that there cannot be any communication. There is the all-permeating reality of all realities. Now, the beings of love and light and of wisdom and of superior prowess are very real, and they can be experienced not just with flying crafts, but simply with manifesting or appearing in one's room or making noises and making a telepathic communication. There needs to be a lot of more emphasis on these people. They are not bad. Quite au contraire, quite the opposite. Now, when many, numerous people worldwide are having these encounters, then we can put the pieces together and say, well, it is a reality. There is, if they are indeed evolved and full of love and wisdom, and many beings evolving from many planets after their own training and growth processes, learning of duality, overcoming karmic reactions, cause and effect. Well, if it is all very real, and it is, when they graduate in that modality, of course, they're going to be friends with each other. So whether you were a small, in comparison to others, if you're a small blue-skinned, sort of egghead-shaped entity, beautiful being, or whether you were a tall-looking being of a different sort, the fact is, love and light connects to itself. Whatever does not gather with me scatters, says the I Am self-source. So when we are ascending and graduating and soul evolving, we naturally, by letting go of lower level things and manipulative control and violence and that which creates perpetual karma, actions and reactions, then we are literally indeed rising into higher dimensions by letting them go. So whether we say it's a chakra system in a universal sense, well, it's very true. So when we are getting into the higher levels and are actually having interactions with beings that are ahead of us and who are saying, you too come along, you too can be it. We are not superior to you. You can catch up to us. You can be with us. All of this is the recurring theme. So when we have stories of, it's not to say that there aren't hoaxers. Some people can make up a story to get money or attention and say, oh, it's this and that, and set up false things. But those who are indeed sincere and who will tell anyone that yes, these beings are real and they can be encountered, they are quite there. Their ships can be seen any day of the week, night or day, if you know how to look, or if it falls into your vision. Telepathic communications can be there. We can speak to them. We can ask them to communicate. They can do it. They will do it to the sincere person very happily. So when this is being experienced worldwide, then we can understand the validity of it. And it is not just limited to a bunch of tall, long-haired Caucasian types and then a few little bald guys. All colors, shapes, and sizes. I myself personally have seen the tall blonde. I have seen the tall East Indian looking one, where people could see of this is of the origin of the Vega system. I myself have seen that, and it is not limited indeed to even humanoid. There are entities who are very much not looking like, they can look humanoid but not like a human, and would not necessarily mingle in the physical and without scaring somebody, right, or a group of persons. But the fact is, of the same theme and vibration of love and light, regardless of appearance, of height, of whatever, then it is the same thing. And many dimensions, 5th, 6th, 7th, and beyond, and working for the purpose of the re-emergence with the God source. How do we know God? What is to know life itself? What's the next step? What's the higher level? What's the next dimension? Sane souls with emotional balance looking to evolve and progress and not regress. Not about control, about assistance. They may allow for some things to happen. There has to be, people have to learn lessons on it. People say, why does God allow bad things to happen? Well, we have to understand that lessons need to be learned. People need to see something so that they do not repeat mistakes. People need to grow. People need to learn and become self-empowered, become self-responsible. How do we become happy? We become happy and responsible and wise, and we're able to help others do the same. There is only service to others or else service to small self. And this is the conflict that is anywhere in the universe of God being source self interacting with various modes of being and created things and thoughts and ideas of things that manifest. Now, for my very own, I would be making such a presentation with no experience, but I do have my own experience very much. And I'll just simply wish to say that I was indeed aboard a ship in my very nice waking memory. If we see in the top left corner, it was a very similar experience. There were actually, even as it is shown there, 7 beings. I had the exact same experience. For me, it was with 7 beings. They all looked like Caucasian or Middle Eastern type men with long hair and beards and white robes and belts, and it was a beautiful, clean, crisp, whitish silver craft, and we all were having a telepathic communication. So they looked very human, and the auras of them were all very beautiful, very wise, holy. The one in the middle is one in the middle and 3 on each side of him in a semicircle facing me. The one in the middle was permeated of extreme, beautiful wisdom, love, humility, and also power, soul evolution. It's not about the power, it is about the fact of the natural soul evolution in a high dimension with extreme humility. It is very hard to describe, but that's really just putting it that way. So holy, so strong, but so humble. The beings that are of an advanced variety who are in the light are very loving and very humble. They do not say, bow down to me. They do not say, I am your God, do this or else. They do not speak in such manners. They can say such a thing as, well, if you do that, that might be the reaction, so make sure you watch your choices. But they are not the ones who are manipulating people for personal gain at all whatsoever. The angels, the watchers, the good Anunnaki, whatever we want to call them, the Els, the Eldar race, with many different names, coming from many different places and systems, but there have been those who have been charged, who have self-accepted the duty to watch this planet and see it evolve and make things go as they go, protect and also serve, and also make sure that lessons are had, all manner of variety of things. The watchers, the angels, the assisters, anybody at all can certainly have an experience with them. It is a matter of acceptance. Do you think that you're worthy of it? If you're not having an experience, do you think you're worthy of it? If you have an understanding that they are real, then is there anything stopping you from having an experience? These are important things we can ask ourselves. The nice thing that I had within, just to go back on it quickly with my own experience, was that I could have passed it off, oh, was it just a dream or this and that, but when you know it's not, when you know, and when there is a physical proof, then there is a great undeniable proving to you that of the very fact. The morning after the incident, I remembered it clearly in my head, and then the second morning, I discovered upon my right temple a thin scar, and I also wrote about this. It's in my book, and I published the story. I was allowed to publish the story on about.com in the paranormal, which is a wonderful place to look with many true stories, and run by Stephen Wagner. And the fact is, there was a very visible and very accurate mark on me, and it was for a purpose to say, yes, it's real, and here, this, and that. So I will put a link to the, I have pictures of that, and I will put a link in the description so you can look at that, and one of my videos is about just that. So these are very real things. People are having good experiences. It is not to doubt it. It's shocking. Even when we say it, it sounds like we don't even believe ourselves sometimes, because it's like we've been taught to think it's so crazy or this and that, or it's fiction, but it is not. It is not science fiction. It is not a fantastical myth from the past. It is about being aware of what already is, apart from whether or not we personally wanted it to be true or not. We have to understand what is the truth, whether or not we want to believe in it or agree with it, and who wouldn't, in their sane mind and in a good heart, want this to be false? It is very real. So these are happening. People are having experiences. People are viewing ships all the time. People are taken aboard ships all the time. People are given comfort and communications and healings and all sorts of things all the time. It is very real. It is global. Let's really rest assured that that is true. And again, that's the same ship from the last picture. Here we're speaking about Galactic Federation. Here we're speaking about Ashtar Command. Here we're speaking about real bodies, spiritually similarly aligned entities who also work, of course, politically. They are about management. They are about expansion, exploration, and assistance to other beings. We on this earth are joining the galactic community. We are getting past one planetary existence with a small ego and a small service to self, and have been growing even on the planet. We have been experiencing and enjoying each other and growing in love and light. Well, now the next step is at hand. Ascension is indeed here. There are beings who are helping and who have been helping since the beginning. There are beings who are incarnating in human form, coming from there to help, looking just human and having a human life. It is all very real. The fact of the matter is, we can understand this and realize that the future and the unknown is not always a bad thing. It is very often a very good thing, and in the highest levels of reality, it is purely a good thing. God is in his prime source. Advancement and growth go into good things and not bad things. Some may advance in a technology and have no spiritual balance or great understanding, and they will, by being in that mode, will self-destruct, will have some very harsh lessons to see before getting out of it. So these are, meaning to say, natural developments, natural defaults. Many people are soon going to have a very clear picture of the who's who and what's going on in the reality of the outer galactic and the cosmos. There are very many people, actually, well, let's just say it this way, the truth. Worldwide, the disclosure is coming. Worldwide, everyone is going to see. Our friends in the heavens are going to appear en masse in the near future and show to all without a shred of a doubt what's what. And we are going to join and align. It is about community, it's about unison. It is a beautiful galactic community, and it is about, even beyond that, just for a dimension of physical travel and such. It is about a huge picture of soul evolution, and we are called to the next stage. There are dimensions that are so high that we can hardly even really understand them. But similar to how we are, a human being can be considered superior to a dog, for an example, in the mode of intellect, for a simple example. Some people might even argue a dog is wiser sometimes, sure. But what I'm saying, just looking at, for the cute example, putting some humor, but looking at it, there are levels of modes of being and operation, and within possessing a body and a type to interact with the necessary surroundings, and the different levels going up from that. So going from, even on this earth as human life, we have gone from living in forests, tribes and such and whatnot, to going to more advanced civilizations, and now we have the idea of, we can take a plane to go somewhere else in the world, and now there's also talk of star travel. Well, we are evolving spiritually and in essence, in a variety of ways, into this reality. It is very real. We can rest assured that it is real. Just because we are getting it, what seems for some of us new, does not mean that it is new for others. It has already been the reality. Other beings have been experiencing it. We're coming along. In our pride, in our ego, in our vanity, in our competition, we get angry that others are ahead of us sometimes, or have such and such, but it all doesn't matter. It's all a big process. And we are growing and learning towards things. We are all equal. The beings... Well, in actual reality, all conscious soul entities are equal on different levels of the path, as it were. But the fact is, some will say to you, a being of truth and light will say to you, no matter how high they are, you too are it, you too become perfect. Whereas others who are maybe a little advanced will be trying to manipulate and say, no, you're not, and you're not that good, and or fight each other. It really becomes obvious, though. And the one who is, again, of a testimony and of an alignment with the good gets into contact and interactions with those who are of the same, and get more and more tidbits of information, and it can be available for anyone who wants it and who is sincere about it. That was a famous quote from the yogi sage Patanjali when he wrote the Yoga Sutras. He put a nice quote: to those who are looking for God and truth, it is closest to the one who wants it the most. If we are sitting at this with a casual attitude, keeping things at bay with a stick, saying, maybe my enemy, maybe this, but if we are people that are very sincerely interested in looking for it and who want proof and who are looking for things, well, it is there. It can be certainly had. You do the work. We don't have to be baby stepped all the time and walked through everything all the time. It doesn't have to be dropped into our lap in a comfortable package, so to speak. We have to do some effort, but, well, be careful what you ask for, because you can find out indeed that these things are quite so. And it is the point. It is not about looking up to and thinking that we're nothing and, oh, the gods are so great and strong. The fact is, we are called to be the same thing. Jesus Christ, the one who was known as he said, be perfect even as the Father in heaven is perfect. When you are done your training, you will be like the Master. Siddhartha Gautama, who became known as the Buddha, said the same thing. You too are it. You are Buddha. The masters of the yin yang and the Tao, those who are mystics and seers all over worldwide, the ancient Egyptian priests and hierarchy, were finding the same thing. The real Illuminati, not false manipulation, control, and getting off with the fact, oh, I have a few powers, therefore I'm great. Not this childish nonsense and irresponsibility, but I'm talking real Illuminati, real illuminated persons, real enlightened persons. Babaji in the mountains. We have the great sages. We have Miriam. We're talking about Krishna and Vishnu. We're talking about all these beings. See, we even have legends of blue-skinned beings going very far back in their flying Vimana, way back. And again, look at the bottom right, we have the flying dragon. So we see how these things are all tied in. But it's not to look up in awe and say, oh, wow, they're so foreign and great. I mean, not to say that the level is not great, but everyone is being called to the same thing. And that is the important realization. Anyone who wants to. Many are called, few are chosen, but that has to do with choosing your own self. It is a natural process. It is a soul evolution of a default nature. We come to accept these things when we are ready for them, and we become ourselves more and more enlightened. We are all called to become ascended masters. How could it not be so? We are not mere playthings for the gods, or there's a cruel puppet master out there. That is not the highest reality. Just because there are some dark beings who are full of fear and competition, and they snag and snare others who are full of fear and competition, or they take advantage of those who are in modes of ignorance, it does not mean that that's the highest reality. Anyone who says, I know more than you, and trust me, it's bad, is speaking falsely. Is speaking of untruth, or speaking of a deliberate lie. When the vibration and the modality of speech and the vibration of feeling is of fear and pride and anger, aggression, even feeling great terror and great vanity, then that person is still in a mode of competition, has not ascended into higher dimensional awareness. There is great light and great purity in the higher dimensions by a default nature. When we understand this accurately and truthfully, we have a great comfort. Our future, even while we are here in a human life and seem to have harsh conditions, bad karmic lesson, brutal lifestyle, it is all for a great purpose. It is all for a learning curve. It is all so that when we get to a certain level, and only by experience, then we can truly become masters ourselves. Everyone you see on the picture here has lived many lifetimes, not just manifested into existence and then voila, God. It is through experience, trial, and error. Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, when he had his enlightenment under the tree, a lot of people just say, oh, well, enlightenment, he just woke up or something. No, the story is he had the deepest insight of all insights, and he saw his soul's journey from its prime all the way to the present and even beyond. What he saw was himself coming out from the great God Source Self, going through a multitude of lifetimes, all manner of beings, not just human, animal, and other, and going through all manner of experiences, being the bad guy, being the saint, being the ignorant, being this and that. And after a long period of soul evolution, coming to the stage in which he was, and then becoming in that particular lifetime an awakened master. Now, it is for all of us to do the same thing. We all have to choose it. It is not about an enforced religion. All of the religions have been manipulated and taken out of context in one way or the other. And then there are great lies. Oh, well, this religion was just made up by that and this and that. Well, keep in mind that there are a lot of dark entities who want people to think certain things so they can control them. And when they start leaving things, they can have false ideas about many aspects of the things. So it is all very intricate and very intertwined with whether or not it is leading towards someone's betterment or not. And it is simply put in those terms. Everyone is to learn of their own, and we have the time and space in which we can do it. We have the space and we have eternity in which we can do it. So it's not to think of one life only, which is a complete, very bad lie, and it's not to think that you have one life and then you're going to hell forever because you didn't agree on someone's name or something like this. That is not reality. When something is full of fear, when something is very vicious and unfair, when we have more mercy than the gods, for example, then we can start to question what's going on and who is who and what's going on. There are lots of lies, but there are also lots of truths and lots of experience we can individually have ourselves to get confirmation and verification to have the true validity and authority in which we can talk about these things and have an awareness of them. Again, it is about natural growth, natural default development. When we are letting go of looking after myself and my own basic desires and my own lusts and and growing into bigger, more, it has to do with self-acceptance. Self-accepting, do you accept yourself as a great being of light, of wisdom, and of worthiness, about being worthy to access and appreciate and enjoy things in this universe, in this reality that we are living in. We may call it a variety of different names, different styles, put religious connotations onto it, nuances and all sorts of things, but the fact is we are one. We are of the same conscious life. And the natural default growth is leaving lesser self and selfish self and growing into a great God indeed, and being of great service and great duty and responsibility. The people of Earth now, who are undergoing the training, as we have been, and who are learning of love and light and wisdom and higher dimensions and of greater powers and things, then we ourselves will be doing terraforming and looking after other quote-unquote younger souls or lesser mode souls going through the same thing. But we are all the same. We are all similar. We are all one. Though those who are ahead are also behind in a manner of speaking. Sometimes it's the child that teaches the parent. So it is self-advancing. It is an ongoing reciprocated dance, and the ongoing reciprocated eternity dance that we are having, and it is very true. So the natural outcome of the evolved soul, people could looking at a chakra systems, people could say there's 7 or there's 12 or 20. It's not really the point, but the natural development of the natural balancing and opening of heart and the natural opening of mind leading to high awareness and wisdom is very much higher than above the desire. Oh, look, I can control the planet and manipulate. Those who think like that are very lost. We should feel very sorry for them. They are not powerful. They are not ahead or wise. They are doing the karmic duty that they must do for all involved, and they will receive what's coming to them. But the fact is, that is not the highest level. Indeed, what do you gain if you have the whole world and lost your soul? Nothing at all. Temporary experiences, temporary modes. So natural default, by letting go and by choosing to grow, we become enlightened beings. The extraterrestrials who are out there are evolved more so than the Terran human, to put it that way, but we are joining them. They are showing themselves more and more. We are getting ready to join the galactic community, galactic awareness and beyond, 4D, 5D and more, and on a global scale and for so many people. And this is a wonderful thing. This is the outcome of what this has all been for. What whole All of Earth history has been leading up into has been this moment. It's not been for nothing. We have been evolving to enjoy higher realities. It has all been a beautiful story. There has been struggle, there has been tears, but it is about success, empowerment, and joy. Enjoying yourself and enjoying others and having a wonderful experience. There are things that are out there for us to experience that we can barely conceive of. That's how amazing it is. The more we leave the lower things, like you think of all the planets and like looking at it from a big picture, you're looking at all these planets, and then you go down to a smaller system, and you go down to a small planet, and you go down to a little country and a little city, and then there's a little person there who thinks, oh, I'm so important and I'm better than people, I'm going to get money for me and all. Like, what I'm saying is you look at it on a bigger scale, you see how ridiculous that is. The person is in a very bad mode of false self-identity. You are so much better than that. You are worth everything. There is no point for us to fight amongst each other and compete. There's animalistic, barbaric ways, and even animals are more evolved than humans sometimes. They're not going to fight for nothing, compete for nothing. You know, they have the survival mode, and we're abusing our intelligence a lot of the time. It is time to get beyond this thing. Natural soul evolution and joining the galactic community is reality. Many people know it and are already experiencing it and already have memories of things. Many more are called. This is a great, as it has been called in the Christian schools, the great graduation, the great feast, the great marriage. We are joining a higher reality. It is wonderful, not a bad thing. It is the greatest thing that we have already secretly always desired, true self-acceptance and acceptance by others, and that is not in a mode of competitive, fearful competition and self-doubt. Now I'll just run through a very quick slide of series of pictures. These things are very real. They're experienced all the time. I'm not lying to you. I can go out and pretty much 90-something% of nights I go out to look at the stars, but I'm really looking for ships. I will certainly see them. You can too. They are very real. They may be at different levels, varying levels of distance. They may put on light shows. There may be just one or more. But I've been seeing them all the time. I've been seeing them more and more. I live in Canada right now, and the fact of the matter is, yes, it's true, more and more sightings in this very country, let alone for worldwide, but even in just this country, tons and tons are being seen. I am seeing them lower. I'm seeing them in more numbers. I'm seeing them in different colors. And so are very, very many people. Worldwide, China, India, Mexico, wherever we want to look, Europe, Africa, it is happening. And that is because they are real and they want to be seen. Those are like the, well, I don't want to put it in a cheesy term, but like the razzle and dazzle crew. Here, look at us. We want you to know that we're there. As you're developing and learning and spiritually evolving, and as your technologies are evolving, we want you to know that we're here too, and we've been helping along the way, but we've been letting you learn for yourselves and at the same time, and we want you to join with us. There's a great reality ahead for you. This is all very true. I mean, I don't even think that my putting some of these pictures were necessary. There are such an abundance of them that it is ridiculous. It is certainly not to say that each and every single picture or alleged picture is certainly true. There are hoaxers. When someone makes a hoax, it is because they are doing it from the mode of the fear of the unknown. If they are making a deliberate lie and being in a position of some knowledge, then they are doing it to try and discredit something. There are those who very much know that the ET phenomenon is very real, who want to discredit it because they are afraid of what the people up there think of them. Meaning to say, there are some people who do bad works and harmful, malicious intentions towards others, and that is not acceptable. That's why there is a quarantine. That is why beings and entities who are of a bad sort, or just simply of a young sort and who need to learn, like going through a school system or program, this earth has been called a school, hospital, jail, or correctional facility, all sorts of things, and it is all of these things. And there are many people who are sincere and who are having sincere interactions with good beings, and then there are those who are having some in-betweens and those who are having negative things. But the thing is, we can look at what the bigger picture is leading towards. There will only be an increase, not a decrease. And indeed, these are good things. It is not for the person who has no experience or who is coming from a limited point of view to just try and discredit all of these. When, for example, the staunch Christian is saying, oh, his demons are tricking you. No, it is not. There are some bad entities who are in a 4D reality or maybe there are some few who have certain specific purposes and who are allowed to do certain things for the purpose of overall karmic lessons and overall growth and many things, and for the bigger picture and for mysteries to be revealed. But the fact is, for the by and large, these are good things. When an entity, and even even the Catholic Church has admitted the ET phenomenon is real. When we are, and all over the world, many religions and whatever, people don't need an authority figure to put this in. Nonetheless, nobody needs an authority figure to tell them this is real. You yourself can experience. You yourself can be your own authority on it by putting all the facts and puzzle pieces together, by having your own viewings of ships, by even having your own interactions with beings. It can very much happen. It can be according to your readiness. It can be according to you if you want to talk or not, or have an experience, is your willingness. But it can be had, and that is the truth of the matter. The one who wants it the most gets it the most, and that's true. And sometimes even those who don't want it get a reminder of it. So even that, all these things put in together. Worldwide, whether in Russia or in Israel or in Saudi Arabia, whether in United States, wherever that this is happening, it is happening. It is a global thing, and it is only going to get more clear. Now, instead of paintings and carvings, we're actually able to take pictures, even video footage of these things. This is becoming very excellent. It's becoming very real, and it was intended and allowed, and it was a natural outcome. Let's rejoice in this. This is not a bad thing. This is beautiful, and it is about graduation and ascension. It's not a bad thing. We have so much programmed fear of the unknown, so much propaganda coming from various sources, many of which certainly not good at all, and intending not good, and intending harm, saying, oh, it's bad, invasion. It's all nonsense. When we are looking at the bigger picture, and we're having hope, and we realize that the future and the unknown is not always bad, but perhaps more often than not good, then we can put aside our doubts and put at ease the inner conflict that we're having, so that we can understand. You see, the more that we as the people on earth have unity with each other, and the more we ask and look for our friends who are up there to communicate with us, like if there was, some said it was a law of 51%, if more than half the world was ready and saying, yeah, let's do it, then that would be the time that they would do it. Does it take, imagine this, for example, if you will, if the whole world, and I know that there's time zone differences and all that, but let's say if we found a nice medium or a nice middle, and the whole world could go outside at the same time and say, all right, guys, and everybody was looking up and say, okay, come down, show yourselves. You know what? They would certainly do it, because they would be ridiculous and foolish not to do it. That would be such a discredit to them. So imagine, my point being, the more human beings are ready and are asking for it, the more disclosure and our awareness and our graduation and ascension is at hand. And it is coming. Some people are overly eager and zealous for this to happen, and others are still humming and hawing, and some are very resistant. But that is the fact. What was our technology leading to? What was our spirituality leading to? It was leading to this. Our very own graduation and welcoming into this galactic reality. Cloud ships are very real. I've seen with my own eyes. There are many sweet mysteries and cloakings that our friends can do, and not every single cloud you can say, oh, the UFO is hiding within it, but when you know there's a certain shape and certain structure to the cloud, a swirling mechanism around it, a certain way in which that is revealed that you can know. And I'm just saying these are another example of things that are very real. And our friends are always in the sky. There is not a moment that they are not around, watching, listening to people. It's all monitored. But the good ones, of course, are innocent. They are not trying to make anyone afraid of them. That is the last thing they want to do. They are not about that. They are only about the opposite. So the majority of Earth humans, to their very big memory at least, have not had waking encounters. I mean, it's not to say of what happens at night during sleep or in between incarnations and many things, but it's to say that a lot of people don't have a conscious memory of experiences, but that is a lot having to do with the fear of it. And our friends in the heavens do not want to scare or impose anything. They do have an idea of respect of us and of free will, and they are, in some cases, not to say afraid of us, but they have a sort of a groaning towards the fact that we are aggressive and defensive, and the fact that we lash out quickly. We've been so permeated with fear for such a long time And it is time to get over this. And the more that we wish to do so and become spiritually inclined to do so, and the more that entities who have been trying to manipulate so bad for so long, these guys, people you hear about Illuminati and such, they're becoming a joke. They're the bad ones I'm talking about. I'm not saying don't respect the fact that they can be violent and have a lot of money and influence, but I'm saying more and more on stage and evident, and in the public view to all, are the characters involved in manipulation being seen and revealed. Nothing is hidden that will not become known. The fact is, even they can have a chance, an opportunity to grow and let go of their competition and their fearful pride and join the galactic community. So it's not even to say it's too late for those individuals. Those who are dark leeches and vampire types, whether they're human or non-human, even those are, in a sense, in the ultimate constitutional sense, children of the isness, of the universe, and we can even have pity for them. Anyways, as for cloud ships, being a worldwide thing, we all can understand that this is happening and is being revealed at first slowly and gently and subtly, but more and more less subtly. And when that comes down to it, when disclosure comes around to it, it is a matter of saying, well, what's the next step then? What are we going to do? Are they going to interact with us and talk to us? Who are they working for? Are they calling us to the good or the bad? And that is exactly it. The reason why the world powers are hesitant to talk about disclosures, because they know if they do, then they got to say, well, what do the aliens have to do with us? The aliens, again, bad word. They're going to say, okay, well, those of you who are decent, you're going to inherit a good, clean earth. We're taking out the trash. The evil manipulations are gone. The ascension is here. The vibrations are happening. The higher awarenesses are happening. Souls are evolving. And those who are hanging on to the lower level things, addicted to the control of 3D matter, even if they're operating in 4D, if they're addicted to the controlling of 3D matter, as it says in the Hindu schools, the entities that are on the planet are addicted to wanting to be the lords and masters of material nature. So anyone who's still trying to be in control and still trying to conquer material nature is still too much in love with it and still too attached to its lower natures, whether in a barbaric sense, in a hedonistic sort of sense. But to have enough experience and to learn to let go, and that there are other things and better ways of being to experience the thing, then it is very easy to let go of that which is here in the Maya, the illusion of it, and get on with the higher realities. Our quality of technology and pictures and videos are getting better, so we're capturing these images a lot better. And not to say that they're all real, there are some hoaxes, but when they're real, they're pretty evident. And the fact of the matter is, they want us to see them. It's not an accident. Oh, look what I accidentally caught. Like, they understand that if they're coming down flying within the vicinity, within a certain ceiling height, that they would be seen. They're fine with that. They want that. They know that's part of the objective, part of the operation going on. So we can be lucky when we do see it. I myself have seen many ships. You probably have seen some too, and some have seen many more. The fact is, it is all very real, and it is indeed coming to a head. Disclosure is so close, and it's going to be excellent. So we are being invited. The beings who are truly advanced and who are truly in higher dimensions are, by default, of great intellect and wisdom, no doubt, and of great love and emotional care and concern. Verily like gods, but also saying, you too come up. You too naturally evolve into these dimensions. You too are it. And so we are saying that this invitation to not to join their reality, but our own reality, the shared reality, is there, has been said for a long time. The kingdom of heaven is at hand. Join Nirvana. We are ready for a next level, and we can realize that whether they are physical or non-physical, and all the variety of dimensions, good is good and bad is bad, simply meaning evolved and emotionally balanced and developed, mentally acute and strong, versus what is regressive and what is still addicted to certain lower levels. But we can understand, again, as I keep saying, the natural process of growth, which has been leading up until now. Which there are some people on some planets right now, even on this very planet, we see quote-unquote lower life forms. We see animals and insects and plants. But that's not to say that they are not in some ultimate way not equal in a way of that they are life to life. And not to say that there are other planets where people are going through the same thing. There are planets just next door to us where people are in a Bronze Age or a Stone Age even. So we, after graduating here, maybe some of us go and help them. Let's think of all these factors. Let's think of the fact of a bigger picture. The sky is the limit and beyond. Well, why and how is it not just that? It is very much the case. Natural soul evolution development. As for this Gaia or Terra, or call her what we will, this is indeed a goddess, a great being that has housed us and is entering her own evolved level. We all reincarnate. This very Gaia has been made and not destroyed, but the surface thereof wiped out at least 4 times. And this is going with the common stories handed down from many people worldwide, Greeks, Hopi Native Americans, etc., and a few others, saying the same sort of stories, Hindus, etc. And the planet itself is going through cycles of life. So we are in such a macrocosmic interrelated reality and dimensional reality, multi-dimensional reality, that while it seems complicated or tricky, or we don't have the terms for it even, or we're limited in our speech, the fact is it is connected by oneness, universe, and life essence, being, interacting in various modes of being with things. So we have had this earth has had a lot of beautiful joys and a lot of tears and a lot of horrible things, but it has been to a purpose. It has been towards the resurrection, the ascension. Not the resurrection of a body, but of what Christ really meant was, in my trying to define it, is that joining with a higher type of being, a higher type of form and body that is allowed to enjoy more and better things. So it is an ascension, it is a growth, it is a natural culmination. As on the earth we have been like caterpillars, but now it is time to become the butterfly and have the butterfly effect. Or we can term it in different ways. It is a birthing process. We have been on an egg and now we're going to hatch into a wonderful phoenix or bird. Call it as you will, in many different flavors and art styles. It is the reality. We are on this planet together, and that is the truth, and it is a wonderful thing. And the more that we are in unison and agree upon things, it is amazing how much we see that, oh, well, you see the same reality. Well, yeah, because it is true. And these things are very much excellent for us to look at. Disclosure is soon. I don't think it's fair to say anyone can say exactly when. Down to the millisecond, perhaps. But, I mean, we heard a talk of 2012. It didn't happen in a visible way, but yes, we have been, if you just look at what the advancement of what has happened from the year 1900 until the year 2000 has been humongous leaps and bounds. Now, even from the year 2000 to the year 2012 have been leaps and bounds, so more and more. Perhaps we are looking at, I've been told, and I have thought about it myself, and it seems realistic that there will be a great disclosure and a great ascension, a great change of the lifestyles, changing life as we know it, would occur somewhere between 2025 and 2045, or 2020 and 2040, somewhere in there. But who's to say, really? Maybe that's not even true. Maybe it's shorter than that, or maybe it's after that. The point is, as it becomes more obvious and as more people want it, and as it feels right, and as it is becoming more aware to more people, then it will happen, has the chance to do so. It is already doing so, and it is for us to embrace it. It is for us to realize, well, we're in a mortal body anyway. We are under the laws of gravity and certain things anyway, so we are in a system and a conditioned state anyway. So we're not the masters of reality, but we are life experiencing this type of reality, and it has been for a purpose. So what is the next stage? Well, it is the galactic community, and the extraterrestrials are very real. They're very eager. They are gentle and shy and humble. However I want to word it. They're not about scaring and enforcing things. They are amazing beings, full of great compassion and wisdom, and are looking to see us become the same thing. And that is where the majority of them are. This is the natural soul development and natural soul evolution, as it is. So let's take great comfort in that. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. I have other videos. I will be making more. Check out some links in the description if you're inclined. And I hope that you will ask yourself where you stand in it. What is your experience with this whole phenomenon? And where do you think you're going next? Because we are moving forward, not backwards. Maybe some are staying going in circles, but for many of us, we're going forward. Take care, and I hope you have a wonderful moment. God bless.